In this video, we are going to give you some Invoker tips and tricks, things that you may not have known about and probably should, because right now this hero is incredibly strong. As you can see, my month win rate with Invoker out of 22 games is 72.7%, which is crazy. If we go here, as you can see in my last 20 games, we've had a lot of wins and barely any losses. Invoker's super strong right now. Let's give you some tips. Up first, you can take advantage of EMP at level 1 rather than getting Coldsnap if you don't need it for an engagement to use to secure your range creep. The reason this works is because EMP still does damage to the range creep, so combining that with a right click can make it really easy to actually take, but also it zones the enemy mid laner away from denying that range creep as well if they're concerned about losing that little bit of mana. Now, a lot of people just see EMP and run away from it, so that is what happens. But as you move up in rank, people are going to realize that at level 1 it's not going to be that big of a deal, so they'll probably just put up with it. But increasing your damage on the range creep is still good, so take advantage of it. If you don't need Coldsnap for an engagement at level 1, just use EMP to secure that range creep. While you're actually trading with the enemy mid laner in the early levels, keep in mind that Coldsnap now actually also gives you a little bit of healing on each time it triggers as well. This is pretty big for trading on a hero, because if you look like you're going to be trading pretty evenly, once you add that Coldsnap to them, if you just trade right clicks, you're going to be healing and dealing damage to them at the same time. So this can definitely set off the difference between a good trade and a bad trade. And also for anyone who doesn't play Invoker, the enemy mid laners, for example, if they don't play this hero, they're not going to know this. I mean, they might know it, but they're not going to consider it unless they've played the matchup a lot. Quite often, you're going to want to land an EMP on someone who has an escape before they can actually escape. This means that you can burn their mana, then they can't use their escape. A good example of this would be trying to land a Tornado EMP combo on, say, Storm Spirit. Storm Spirit can just zap away from it. If you use Tornado on him and then drop an EMP, by the time he lands, he can just zip away. And even if you use Coldsnap, chances are he's still going to use Zip before the EMP hits him, and he loses no mana and he's away. What you can do instead, and what I would recommend doing, and keep this in mind for all heroes that have some form of escape, is use EMP and then use Tornado to make sure that you actually force them to land in it. And then the second that they land, use Coldsnap on them before they can get away, and this will definitely guarantee that you're going to get that EMP to land. So you're going to EMP, Tornado, then Coldsnap as soon as they land. This will secure that for you in most places. Now keep in mind, this is important, as you level up your Quas orbs, the blue ones, you are going to be able to increase the lift time of your Tornado. So you're not going to want to use EMP then Tornado in a later game when your lift time is too high. This works until around about level 4 or 5 Quas, so do keep that in mind. But early on, when you've only got level 4, which is for most of the game, you're just going to want to use EMP then Tornado, then land them with a Coldsnap, and you're going to get that EMP off before they can escape. The same goes as well if you want to do EMP, Coldsnap, Tornado. This will be just as good. It's absolutely the same thing. It's fine. The Aghanim Shard for Invoker affects your EMP. It's going to add a suction to the EMP to drag people into the center of it so they can't escape. Now, there's a few things you can do with this, so this tip's going to be quite long while I explain a couple of them, and then you can kind of use your imagination for how you can use other ones, right? So, EMP, a great one to know immediately is that if you use EMP in Coldsnap, you're going to instantly get a good drag from that. Like, it's going to immediately drag them in at least a little bit, and then it's harder for them to get away. So using EMP in Coldsnap is incredibly good, and it's just going to be something that you're going to use a lot throughout the game, especially when trying to initiate on people or chase people down. I quite often use EMP and Coldsnap on a high ground push to pull anyone down who's trying to defend and they're kind of around their tower. If you put EMP, the center of it, on the low ground and then Coldsnap them and then any sort of other stun from your team, they're going to immediately be dragged down to the low ground and you can kill them off. Quite a lot of people aren't used to this yet, so you can get them out of position with it quite often, and it's really easy to do. So keep that in mind. You can also pull them back into ice walls so that you can then set up a longer combination, like a meteor afterwards. And it's just, you just put the ice wall down, then you put the EMP like in the center of it or just behind it. It sucks them in, and it's just screwed at that point. There's so many other things you can do with this as well, but just to quickly name some off the top without wasting too much time is like if Void uses a Chrono on your team and people are just on the outside of it, like he's got his main target inside, but there's a couple of people around it trying to help them, use EMP in the middle of the Chrono or just on the side of it or something, people get sucked into it and then they're stuck in the Chronosphere as well. The same goes for Black Hole. If there is some people just on the outside of it, not quite in it, you just put the EMP in the middle of the Black Hole or just on the edge of it and they get sucked into it as well. So you can like add this into setting up other skills for other people too. The other thing is Cataclysm. If you have Aghanim's Scepter, you can use Cataclysm while people are being sucked into the EMP and they struggle to get out of the center of it. So it's a really good setup for things like that as well. Like I say, there's many things that you can do with EMP right now, and it's just super useful. So just try experimenting with it. But the Coldsnap and the EMP thing is insanely good for chasing people down, insanely good for initiating on people that just don't expect it, and stopping people from escaping. If you're fighting somebody that has a blade mail, in the past it was always a pain in the arse. You had to use a BKB, right? And it was just hurtful. If you use a meteor on someone with a blade mail, it hurts like hell and it just sucks. However, in this patch now with the new Invoker, if you throw your damage with the 3 Quas orbs instead of using Exort or Wex, now you are going to lose a bit of damage for this, or cooldown reduction of course, but if you use the Quas orbs, it's going to allow you to get spell lifesteal back, which helps sustain you through the reflected damage. So if you don't have a BKB yet, but you still want to use things like a meteor, or you want to use any form of damage on someone with a blade mail, make sure you cast it on 3 Quas orbs first, because it's going to allow you to sustain through it and not basically just insta-kill yourself with all that damage from the meatball rolling over them. Just a quick reminder, by the way, if you haven't already clicked the sub button, which is going to be most of you guys, please do consider subbing to the channel, as I'll be posting content a hell of a lot, and something crazy like 99% of you guys obviously still aren't subbed to the channel, so do give it a click. It will help out a ton and I appreciate it. Let's get back to the tips. Now, one of the classic combos for Invoker is to use Tornado, Sunstrike, Meteor, and Deafening Blast to be able to kill off pretty much any support that doesn't have a way to deal with it, like a Yules or a Force Staff, or like anything at all to deal with it. And the same goes for pretty much quite a lot of carries before they get BKB too, or if they've used it in a fight. Now, if you're going to use this, it is important now to remember that using Exort Orbs is going to increase your damage output by quite a lot. So what I would suggest doing is when you cast this combo, do it with Tornado and Meteor invoked first, and then make sure you have your Sunstrike orbs ready to invoke the Sunstrike, and then as soon as you throw the Tornado, you invoke the Sunstrike, and then cast Sunstrike and Meteor on the Exort orbs, and then make your Deafening Blast. In this order, it just makes it easier to make sure you're always on that highest damage output setting, just to make sure you get that extra little bit DPS out of it to make sure the person's dead. And how many times am I going to say make sure in this tip? Something I get asked a lot, which isn't necessarily now just about the new Invoker, but just Invoker overall, is why do you put your Alacrity on your Forge Spirits instead of yourself? When I'm pushing a lane, I always, well, most of the time, always Alacrity my Forge Spirits rather than myself. Now, there's a reason for this, and people always ask, so here it is. If you Alacrity your Forge Spirits, it means that you can leave that Forge Spirit with a high damage on either the tower or in the lane where it's not safe. And if you feel like you need to leave, or if you do need to leave all of a sudden, you're not kind of taking that Alacrity away, and your Forge Spirit is either still pushing the tower and doing good damage, or farming the lane for you where you wouldn't have been able to do so in the first place. Now, obviously, if you feel perfectly safe and you know you're going to be there for the full duration of the Alacrity and you're going to get the damage out of it, then use it on yourself. It is better to do that. However, if you do feel like you may need to leave, or if you're going to be sieging high ground, or if you're just wanting to push a lane that isn't exactly safe for you to stay in, then use Alacrity on a Forge Spirit and send them out into the dangerous zone, because if they die, it is what it is. Doesn't matter, right? But of course, if you have to then ditch, which a lot of the time you may have to if you see someone coming on the map, or if you just feel this isn't very safe, then you're taking that Alacrity away with you. Just put it on the Forge Spirit, get some extra damage out of it while you're no longer around. So the final tip for this video is going to be about Exort Invoker, the build that people don't really use anymore because Wex is just super strong. But there is something to keep in mind with this build, and that is if you have people in your team that can set up Sunstrike really well, because with the extra damage, this still boosts Sunstrike as well if you have 3 Exort Orbs. So 1, always cast Sunstrike with 3 Exort Orbs anyway, so when you make the actual spell, cast it from that, because you're going to get more damage out of it. But 2, I am currently level 13. Level 13. And you're going to see just how much pure damage I can get out of a maxed out Sunstrike at this level. So we're going to check it on this target over here. And you're going to see 605 pure damage rather than the 500 that you would have expected, because we casted it with the spell amplification. So this is pretty damn good, and 605 pure damage is not anything to laugh at level 13. Do you know how many heroes at level 13 you're going to be taking like the majority of their health from with this if you have the setup? It's crazy. It is really, really good. Now, the next thing to keep in mind is when you're a higher level and you're like towards the end game, let's just say like you've hit level 25 and you've grabbed the extra Quas, Wex, and Exort passive effects, and then you also have an Aghanim Scepter. The damage of this thing is absolutely nuts. Like, just in case you didn't realize, because this is important to know, right? Everyone knew in the past that, you know, 550 health is how much you would be able to take off of an enemy hero. You check the health first. It's changed, obviously, because we have the new extra damage. The new max hit of Sunstrike is 781 pure damage. 781. That's without any other spell amplification on your hero as well. So keep that in mind. You're hitting insane pure damage. This thing has a 25-second cooldown when cast with Exort. That's crazy. There's a lot of damage, and it's not something to sort of take lightly. And also keep in mind, if you do have Ags, you're doing a ton of damage of that Cataclysm. You got 1.5k damage there. It's pretty crazy. So now that we're back to posting way more content, if you guys want to get content early, which I'm going to be stacking up as much as I can, you can support the channel by becoming a channel member, but also you will not only get emotes and badges and stuff, you'll get video access as soon as that video is up there. It'll be for members only first, and then it'll go public afterwards. And you do support the channel a ton, and obviously the more support the channel gets, the more I can spend making content on this channel rather than my main YouTube channel. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, getting more content and early content, consider joining as a channel member, and I would appreciate it a freaking ton. There you go, some Invoker tips that I've learned and thought would be useful to share with you guys. Now, I'm an Invoker spammer, I'm a pretty nerdy Invoker player, and I just love the freaking hero so much. This new patch hasn't ruined it for me in any way whatsoever. I still think it's super fun and actually adds a lot more skill and depth to the hero as well. So hopefully you enjoy the hero. It is super strong right now. Good luck in your games, and I'll catch you on the next one.